Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Curtis Lane, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today to our Advocacy in Action Lunch. It's great to see such a great turnout. You know, the content creator economy is massive, with more than 200 million individual accounts across social media platforms, generating $250 billion of revenues in 2023. The influence of content creators, or influencers, is undeniable. Content creators are not just shaping opinions, they are shaping the world in which we live, often more directly than traditional media. In the wake of October 7th, we've all seen the surge in anti-Semitism and anti-Israel misinformation that has proliferated amongst part of the content creator ecosystem. But there are also Jewish, and importantly, non-Jewish, pro-Israel content creators who are willing to engage with the Jewish community on our issues. Content creators have quickly become critical leaders to engage with as a part of AJC's global work to fight anti-Semitism and support Israel. AJC has worked closely with creators who want to use their platforms to make a difference. This has included bringing them to Israel through Project Interchange and becoming a trusted resource and partner to those creators to give them the information that they need as they appropriately provide the right information into the ecosystem, but also doing it at sometimes great risk to themselves personally and professionally. This session will tackle some of those major questions around surging anti-Semitism and anti-Israel content and on social media that creators are uniquely positioned to be able to help us address. It's now my pleasure to welcome three experts who have firsthand experience using their platforms in this regard. One is Meryl Harsam. I think you're going to come up now, right? You can come up. Right? I didn't know you were such a media star, but I've been following you since I started doing this. So I'm one of your unique millions of followers. Melissa Rosenfeld, are you going to come up? Who's the CEO and founder of IFB Communications. And Jonah Platt, host of Being Jewish with Jonah Platt. Before we get started, Jonah, I don't know if you know this. I didn't want to tell you while we're sitting there, but I was in your parents' class in college. Nice. Yes, so we were there, and we were co-gift chairs for about 20 years for our fundraising campaigns. Anyway, Dana, if you can get up here, she's going to moderate it, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Curtis, for really setting the tone and setting the stage here. And welcome, everybody. We're so happy to have you join us for what's going to be an incredible conversation. Just a reminder, please silence your cell phones. You can certainly use them. This is a content creator session after all, but let's keep them silenced for now. So, I'm so happy to be up here with all of you. This is so great. I should just say, I've gotten to know each of these creators and advisors and mentors over really the last year or so. I should say explicitly, I am not a content creator at all, but over the last 18 months, many of us have had to understand what it means to be a content creator and the power and impact that content creation has, not only after October 7th, but certainly more acutely since the horrors of October 7th. So we have three unique and individual voices who are going to share their expertise and wisdom with us, and we're so excited to get started. So actually, I want to start from the top, from the 30,000-foot view. So Melissa, the godmother to so many content creators in this room today.
Is this on?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, hi. I didn't even know that was like my semi-title, but I like it.
Oh, absolutely. I want to call out another creator in this room, Ari Axelrod, who's referred to you as the godmother. So I want to start with a 30,000-foot view. As someone who runs a really successful PR and marketing agency, you've worked with clients who've become household names, particularly in luxury, fashion, beauty, lifestyle. You've worked with A-list celebrities, hotels, and you actually helped launch the branding for the Nanit, which is my favorite camera to spy on my nephew.
And was founded by two dads in Israel. It's an Israeli company.
Exactly. See, Israeli innovation, always at its peak.
For real.
So you have a vast view of the marketplace in terms of working on brand deals with more traditional clientele and the content creator economy. Talk us through what you're seeing right now in the last 18 months after October 7th. How would you say this moment is affecting Jewish and Israel supportive creators and potential brand deals, and what does the ecosystem look like generally?
Yeah, so it's been a very challenging 18 months, I think, for a lot of content creators, because prior to October 7th, most people were just Jewish, but it wasn't their entire personality. And on the, let's say, other side of things, it's become the entire personality. So you are really trying to break through the noise in advocacy while also kind of maintaining your community that you've spent all this time building and the brand deals and everything else. And unfortunately, for a lot of Jewish creators, after October 7th and being able to speak, openly about the way they felt or what was going on, brand deals started to dry up, and eventually for a lot of people, dried up completely. They were pushed out of spaces, which is pretty horrific. And that's not even kind of beginning just the harassment that they and so many of us have received online, right? So the space that was formerly this like beautiful community that you built is now completely foreign. On the flip side, you have all these other people who know nothing about a conflict and nothing about what happened, and suddenly they are Middle East experts, and this is their entire personality. And so it's been really interesting to see how brands are responding to it. I'm in a position, very lucky position, where we negotiate these deals. So on October 8th and October 9th, when my friends were saying, we're gonna do this, and we've all been very vocal, I said, well, we have this ability to still hire people, so we will, because we can't just close them out of spaces. And a friend of ours always says, like, we need to show up in the spaces even if we don't wanna be there. Daniela literally says this to me all the time as a reminder. So I've been lucky to be able to continue to hire people where I can, pull from budgets where I can, and I know other brands are trying to do that, but it's been very, very challenging. Now, the good thing that's come out of this is for a lot of Jewish content creators, they've been able to use their platform as a way to make money. And there is some conflict in the community. Actually, I have to say, AJC has been such an amazing supporter of content creators, and it's really you guys are at the forefront of this conversation in a way that most other organizations are not right now, and thank you. Yeah, seriously. And for two reasons. One, because you're creating a space where we can all come. I do also create content and do advocacy work. And also you acknowledge that this is how people get paid as well, and I think that's really important. So for a lot of these Jewish content creators, this has also become a revenue stream, and part of the conflict is, are you being paid for being Jewish? Are you being paid by the Israeli government to have these opinions? Well, no. I would say most of us are, reflecting what we feel and what we know, and are taking time to educate ourselves and really be well-versed. I think obviously these two here are excellent examples of that. And so it's a good thing that they're able to get paid in this way, because again, it really dried up very, very quickly. I think now, 18 months later, it started to kind of turn a little bit again. I think people are exhausted by the conversation. I think people are exhausted by the war. We're all exhausted by the war. And the fact that our hostages aren't home, right? Like, we could say that till we're blue in the face. So some doors are starting to open up again, thank God, but we should have never been pushed out of those spaces in the first place. And I think for now, people are just trying to also get their footing on whatever this next phase is. And one other thing I want to say, sorry, I'm going a little long, but there was a period probably like a year ago where there were some people in Hollywood, agencies that I work with, who sent out notes to, and I think this explains kind of the overall tone, sent notes to their team saying, if people are calling it a genocide, we're not working with them. That's the one word they cannot use in their advocacy on either side, and we will not work with them. And that note ended up going to Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, and I was actually shocked at how reasonable both of those publications were in reporting on it, because they weren't wrong, and it is the brand's prerogative to decide who they want to work with, and if that's a word that they're using that is so polarizing and inaccurate, then they shouldn't. So it's been very interesting to see that, people kind of like try to dox these brands who are trying to get Jewish creators, or at least set some parameters. And I mean, certain publications were actually okay about it.
Can I ask Melissa a question? I'm curious, with the brands pulling out of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you find that that's specifically because it's a Jewish Israel thing, or it's because there are now clients who are taking, a position in a hot button controversial thing?
Yeah, so I think it's, my Instagram is public. I know there are people here who follow me. People know who I am, and my brands know who I am, and my brands know where I stay. And I think that, like, there was a moment when I was dealing with these brand deals and these celebrities and all these things, and I was like, oh my God. And like, there are clearly people I'm not going near, and as far as I'm concerned, they're radioactive, and I'll probably never go near them after the ridiculous things they said about a topic they know nothing about. I don't think that it's just about I think it's about the bigger picture of the conflict and that it's literally become people's personalities. And so by pulling money away from Jewish creators who are loud about it means that you're kind of like being a little bit Switzerland, if you will. But you're not being Switzerland. You're very clearly saying we're not going to pay these content creators, but we'll pay the idiots on the other side. I'm sorry, Dana knows that sometimes I get a little passionate.
Listen, this is the business, right?
It is. And so I think that for some brand, 100%, there are brands, we were talking about it earlier, Telfar is a brand that I love. I have a lot of handbags sitting in a closet waiting for him to come around and stop sending money to fake organizations. That is somebody who knows nothing about a conflict, but because it's trendy and the people he reaches, it's very popular. But there are other big brands who took a pause on a lot of creators across the board. They said, we don't do that. We've spoken to brands this year, brands that you probably have in your medicine cabinets and in your homes, who are like, we are not political. Okay, that's fine, but then let's stick to that, right? And that means across everything. If you're not gonna talk about this because this is political, then I don't wanna hear you talking about Trump or the Ukraine or anything else. And so that's really where it gets to be a kind of funky gray area. I don't think it's all anti-Semitism. I think that unfortunately what anti-Semitism means and anti-Zionism is very cloudy for people outside this room right now. But I think the war is kind of like the first part in what they can use as a reason to pull back money from content creators, especially Jewish ones.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Hello. I think something that's also really interesting, I can yell, I'm a camp counselor. So what I was gonna say is that, you know, AJC has hosted a couple different opportunities for content creators in the last 18 months, including 2 summits, one in LA in which we worked with Jonah, and one in New York in which we worked with Melissa and Mare. And at the LA conference, we heard something fascinating from a content creator who is not Jewish, who has 9 million followers on TikTok alone, and did a brand deal with a particular company, and that particular company does not have any stores in Israel. However, after doing the deal with this company, the pages of hers and the brand were being barraged with awful, horrific, anti-Semitic and anti-Israel content, so much so that the brand said, we will cancel this deal because it's actually just not worth it to us financially. This person was not a Jewish content creator. The brand wasn't Jewish or had anything to do with Israel at all. But the environment was so toxic and so really, honestly, violent. It was really violent language that this creator now had to think twice about doing these kinds of brand deals again. So what's interesting is sometimes it's about being a Jewish creator who has to make really difficult decisions, but sometimes it's not even related at all, and it really affects a person's ability to be able to do business, which is challenging.
You bring up a good point because there was in the news like 2 weeks ago, Alex Earl, who's probably like the #1 content creator. I didn't know she was Jewish. Forgive me for not paying attention, but that's not my thing. My team all loves her. If you ask any of your children or look on TikTok, she will come up. She's a gorgeous blonde girl from Miami. And Gymshark, she sued Gymshark and won because they pulled a deal from her because she supported Israel. And I'm glad she won, but then the people with no personalities except this one were like, yeah, we all gotta buy Gymshark, da-da-da-da. And it's like, this is what you're dealing with. It's
Right.
just, it's so absurd. It's like literally theatrical and absurd half the time.
Right.
But when that's your source of income,
Right.
it's really scary.
So I want to talk more about that. So, Mare, you often refer to yourself as the influencer to the influencers, and that is how I will always and forever think of you. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Mare's personal journey with Israel. She came on AJC Project Interchange with me last year. Mare is not Jewish, but has been an extraordinary advocate for the Jewish people and for Israel. So, yes. So I want to talk a little bit because, you know, Melissa, you are in and outside of the Jewish community. You work within and not with Jewish brands. But Mare, you primarily don't work with Jewish content creators, and your ecosystem looks a lot different than probably the one in this room. So give us your read on what you're seeing. What does it look like from your landscape?
So I come from like the mainstream, quote unquote, world of influencer marketing, and I've been in this world for many, many years. And if you had told me 5 or 6 years ago that I would be sitting on a panel talking about the intersection of advocacy and influencers, I would have told you you were crazy. There was really a time where I think a lot of creators were expected not to speak about what they cared about or not speak about anything that actually mattered. I think it was a lot of just people looking pretty on social media. Gen Z has been really important in wanting to know who these creators are, what they stand for. They want to feel like they're following a friend in a way. So it's definitely shifted from kind of like the millennial fashion bloggers who are more aspirational than relatable. And now we're kind of in a world where creators are kind of expected to speak about their views, and people are asking them and they want to know what they think and what they believe and how they're supporting people. We're also kind of coming off of what a lot of people are calling the first influencer election. Influencers played a massive role for both parties in this election. Again, something I would never have thought was a thing. So, you know, it's really different to see, because there was once a world where creators were, I mean, to an extent, creators are still losing brand deals for talking about, I mean, anything. But there are also creators who are making money talking about issues, which is incredible, and they're able to partner with organizations, and it's just a completely different world than it was so long ago, and it's incredible to see, because it's really the future of both social media and advocacy. But it's so unexpected. Again, like if you had told me this 5-6 years ago, I never would have believed it. And you know, influencers, I think for a long time were kind of seen as surface level, shallow. I think a lot of people didn't really get it, and it's just so incredible to have creators being such an important part of the conversation.
Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting is that for those who are unfamiliar with the industry, they're kind of your mega influencers who have many, many millions of followers. Then there's kind of nano and micro influencers, people who have less than 100,000, people who have less than 10,000. But at the end of the day, everyone has different spheres of influence, and they reach people in different ways. And it's really critical to think of some of these grassroots micro and nano influencers. They are actually holding a lot more power than people realize. So speaking of influence and power, I want to talk about the podcasting universe. So I want to talk to the very successful and very incredible Jonah Platt.
Thank you.
Who launched a podcast in the last year, being Jewish, of which I have listened to many episodes, all of which are incredible. If you haven't had the chance to listen and watch, because one of the great things about the podcast system now is there's a lot of videos, so you're able to see the conversations happening as well as listening to them. So the podcast universe is a different beast. We know for a fact that podcasters like Theo Von or Joe Rogan have unbelievable influence in the creator economy. We don't necessarily think of them as being part of the same ecosystem, but they are. They're part of the same market share. So you've launched this incredible podcast. You've had some incredible guests like Meta World Peace, Tiffany Haddish, Van Jones, a lot of others who I've loved listening to. How do you feel like the podcast universe can break echo chambers? Because I think that's an important conversation. There's a lot of concern in the Jewish advocacy world that we're talking to ourselves. And I think that's probably true in a lot of ways. How do you feel that in your experience with your podcast and podcasting in general can be a space in which we can break out of those echo chambers?
So I don't necessarily think it's anything particular to a podcast that allows you to break out of an echo chamber. And this is going to sound obvious, but the way to break out of the echo chamber is to attempt to break out of the echo chamber. And you have to build what you're doing to do that. From the very beginning, that was like a key foundational piece of my podcast, is really wanting to make sure it's for everyone, Jew and non-Jewish alike, which is why I have, as you mentioned, Meta World Peace, Van Jones, not Jewish. I have a lot of people who watch the show who are not Jewish, and that's super important to me, and that's why it's a part of it. It's, it wasn't necessarily a calculation. It came from a place of, I like that. Like, that is something vital to me. It's something I do in my real life, try to build bridges, across communities. So you have to be thoughtful about the approach, and you're certainly right. I think a lot of Jewish advocates and content creators are stuck in the echo chamber because they are creating content just for us. and if it's just for us, only we are going to hear it. And the algorithm is very powerful on social media. This is an organic plug for the podcast, but I talk about this very subject in the episode that comes out tomorrow.
Amazing.
We are living in two different realities online, very literally. The algorithm, if you bought a yoga mat one time a year ago, the algorithm thinks you're a liberal and is now sending you pictures of dead babies in Gaza all day long. And you're not seeing anything from the Jewish community at all. I get into this on the pod, but I'll tell you guys a little story. I was talking with Van Jones recently. We were at this amazing Exodus dinner that he is starting to put on, bringing black Jews and blacks and Jews together. And he was telling me the day the Bibas twins' bodies were returned, he reached out to a friend about something else, a Jewish friend, and she wasn't responding. And he's like, "What's up? Where are you?" And she's like, "I'm just really upset about what's happening." And he was like about what? Like something with Trump or what? And she was like, "No, with like the Bibas twins." And he was like, "Who are the Bibas twins?" And this is Van Jones, who is like an incredible ally and knows a lot about the news and current events. He had never seen them or heard about them. They weren't in the mainstream media, and his algorithm, and this is a guy who he follows Jewish content creators. If you're not engaging very proactively with certain content creators, even if you follow them, you're not going to get that content. So he said the whole black community, he's like, Jews were going online being like, "Where are my black friends?" He was like, the black friends haven't seen anything about this. They don't know what's happening. And it's through no fault of their own. But we have to really work proactively if we want to break through that. So you have to really be appealing to people outside the echo chamber, really looking to cross-contaminate with other communities if you want to be heard outside of the Jewish community.
Absolutely. And actually, you and I are going to talk about that in just a few minutes, about the urgency for us to do coalition work, especially now. I think there's been a concern or a feeling of people not showing up, but that shouldn't be a roadblock, and we'll get to that in a second. So I want to pivot to talking about breaking echo chambers a little bit more, like pivoting within a pivot. So Mer, we went to Israel together last year. And we were part of a group of 10 content creators, of whom only one was Jewish. The other 9 were not Jewish, many of whom were deeply Christian. I think that's a really important and really purposeful vision for bringing folks to Israel, because there is that sense of connection for their own faith, but also a sense of curiosity, which I think was really powerful. So when we ended up going, to Israel, we went to Tel Aviv, we went to Jerusalem, we went down south, which I know from our experience together on the bus was very meaningful. I actually don't know if Eitan is in the room with us, but one of our Access Israel leaders who works for the Hostage Family Forum came to the south with us and showed all of us around, and it was really, really beautiful and really special. So for you as a creator, but also as someone who works with creators, what was your big takeaway from, or your several probably big takeaways, from your time in Israel? Because I think one of the things that's so amazing is so many people are very happy to be armchair experts and yet have never witnessed the complexity with their eyes, have never met Israelis. I think one of the things I loved about our group is there was this group of guys who I love and called the TikTok boys, because they were all on TikTok and they were getting recognized by Israelis in the street, and it was amazing. And every single time we had 2 minutes, they would run up to some Israelis and just be like, "Yo, man, like, what's your deal? Like, were you in the IDF?" And it was like reading the room.
So excited.
They were so excited. But it was incredible, because it was those moments they were able to have a one-on-one conversation with a real live Israeli who was like, "Listen, it's been awful and it's been really hard for me." And we were able to peel back those layers. So what was your experience? It was your first time in Israel.
I mean, I could sit here for 10 hours and talk about it, and we were only there for 4 days. And it was, I always say it was the highest of highs and the lowest of lows I've ever experienced, maybe ever, let alone in a 4-day period. Probably experienced the full range of human emotion. Kind of building off of what Jonah was saying, for me, the reason I kind of got into this space was because on October 7th, I had posted an Instagram story, here's how you can help. And a lot of the Jewish creators I work with and my Jewish friends, I got all these messages from them saying, thank you so much for saying something. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, of course. But again, like, you all have a very different lived experience than me. You all kind of knew how this was gonna go. I did not. And then, within 24 hours, the narrative was shifted, and, I have an audience of a lot of people in entertainment, a lot of people in the mainstream influencer world, and, they were taking a particular side, and there was this echo chamber going on, and, then you would kind of like swipe up and ask them a couple questions, and they implode because they don't really know what they're talking about, but they're just sharing the thing that they think they're supposed to share and all of that. And so that's sort of the reason why I started kind of speaking out, is because there weren't a lot of people who were in my position and in my world that were willing to talk about it, or honestly had the knowledge to talk about it. And so the trip was really interesting to have all these creators who were, not Jewish, because they were able to come and break those echo chambers as well. Some creators posted about it, some creators didn't, but they were able to. There's such a snowball effect when it comes to, these creators have all of these followers, and they have friends that have all these followers, who have friends who have all these followers, and for them to be able to just start that conversation, come back to LA, gather up with all their other TikTok friends and be able to say, no, we were actually there. We know what we're talking about. We saw it with our own eyes. It was really incredible. And just to be there, it was never really something that was on my bucket list. I don't think I ever believed I would go. So it was so just unbelievable to be there and just feel, the spirit of the people and the joy and the excitement everywhere we went, even though, it's the middle of this horrifying conflict, and still there's so much joy and singing and dancing and excitement and color and beauty, and it was just incredible to see. It was unbelievable and honestly so inspiring.
If you had to pick, just putting you on the spot, if you had to pick one highlight, just one, what would be a highlight for you?
That's hard. I mean, I could say, okay, we did a food tour in the Shuk of Jerusalem.
I knew it was gonna be
and
food.
It has to be food. It's always food.
No, but it was 6 or 8 courses, and every course we went to a different stand and got. I mean, we had to be rolled back on the bus by the end of it, but it was unbelievable. I mean, incredible.
It was delicious. Yeah. I will also say the tour guide is an amazing woman named Orit Levy. She's a Moroccan-Israeli culinary expert, and it shouldn't come as a surprise that the Israeli economy has been horribly impacted by the war. Tourism is down. Local business is down because so many people are serving in reserves for hundreds and hundreds of days. They're not able to work the way that they normally do. So it was really important to us that we were able to help local business. We were able to eat at their restaurants. We were able to pay local tour guides. We were really amplifying local voices. It was really important to us.
Yeah, and we were also able to meet with hostage families, which was such a unique experience and incredible, and just hear their stories. And they were so kind to welcome us into their homes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were coming into the trip with varying degrees of knowledge as to what was going on in the conflict. Some kids were just kids and didn't really know what was going on. Some were policy creators who were very involved. And to be able to sit down with hostage families in their homes and just hear their stories, let them speak to us, and also know that we were going to share their stories as well. It was really incredible. It was so impactful. I mean, intense, definitely intense, but unbelievable.
Amazing. And this is really the work of AJC Project Interchange, which for those who are not familiar, AJC Project Interchange brings people of influence, whether it's creators or mayors or tech entrepreneurs, to Israel for a period of time, and we really show them a holistic view of the experience. It's not just a Disneyland tour, it's the real deal. We work with real subject matter experts, security experts, policy experts, so people can come back and really be force multipliers for good when they get home. I want to turn back to allyship. So you mentioned about your conversation with Van and about your work with the Black community and the Black Jewish community. And I know there has been some sense of reticence from the Jewish community of feeling like they're not sure they can do the coalition work right now. They're not sure they can do the allyship work. And that's a painful thing because we are a community that believes so heavily in allyship and showing up. And for many people in the days, weeks, months, and maybe even years after 10/7, maybe we didn't feel the exact sort of support that we would have hoped for. But in spite of that, why is it more important than ever for us to double down on these allyship efforts? You know better than anybody that this is critical as a content creator, as a podcaster, as an advocate. Why does this matter now more than ever?
I mean, it's huge. We are so small in number. We definitely can't do this alone. And look, for the people who feel, and I'm not gaslighting anybody here. Certainly we have been abandoned in many ways. But for the people, a lot of it is people feeling, well, you didn't show up for me in this moment. You know, if we're being honest, there's many other moments around the world happening that you didn't show up for other people. It's sort of unrealistic to expect that every person is going to show up for everything that's important to everybody all the time. You show up more for the things that you have a direct connection to or a personal relationship to. Which is not to excuse anybody. On October 8th, everybody should have shown up. That one, nobody gets a free pass on that. That one was easy.
October 7.5.
Yeah, that was a layup. But in the time since, it's tricky. Look, I just got back literally Saturday night from, I was on March of the Living, and I went with an organization called Sharaka, which is an incredible organization. We know Sharaka. I love that. Not a lot of people know it. It's new. They bring moderate Muslims from all over North Africa, the Middle East, and Asia to Israel and to March of the Living. And they asked me to come along with them. So I went with about 20 moderate Muslims from Lebanon, Yemen, Morocco, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bahrain, all these folks to Germany and Poland. And it was amazing. It was so great to see how not alone we are. And what I realized from that is two things. One is, you know, we are just sort of as blind as it is the other way, meaning it's not like we're like, where are the Muslims, friends, right? It's not like we're doing a lot of outreach to Muslims. Like if you haven't reached outside your circle to try to build a connection, you can't really expect somebody from another circle to reach out and make one to you. You have to go seek these people out. You have to make this important if you want it to be important. That was so important for me to see, and also important to realize it's also difficult for a lot of people in other spaces in their communities to show up. For some of the people on my trip, it was literally like they could not be photographed or tell anyone they were on this trip with us because it would put them in actual danger. But they wanted to show up, and there are reasonable, decent, moderate people all over the world who care and want to understand and were willing to take a risk just to understand more and be there with us. So it was very comforting to me to understand how prevalent those people are, and they want to be allies. Not everybody knows how to be an ally. They don't know what we need. They don't know how to show up. They don't know what's important. So we have to have our hands out. We need to be making the efforts. We need to not let hurt feelings or fear stand in the way of doing what we need to do, which is to bring more people into the circle and to make friends and build relationships. You know, the only way to normalize Jews taking up space in the public sphere and being loud and proud and being, you know, a key piece of the world is to do that. And if we're going to do that, we need friends who we can show up with and be welcomed into spaces with them. So I just think it's absolutely critical, and every sort of bridge building step I've taken in the last 2 years has been overwhelmingly positive. Like there's been nothing negative about it. I'm seeing the circle start to widen. To quote Van Jones again, he had this phrase that I just think about. I mentioned this Exodus dinner. It was huge this year. It was, 18 tables in a big event hall. Last year, it was in a backyard. It was like 30 people. And at that dinner, he was like, look, the people in this dinner, like, we're in the circle, and we're just going to keep widening the circle, and we're just going to keep adding people to the circle. And then a year later, he added a whole ton of people to that circle. And so we just need to all just think about it that way. Just keep widening the circle. And the last thing I'll say, I'll give up the mic. You know, and it's another Van thing. He's a smart guy. I learn a lot from him. When you think about like the civil rights movement, where Jews stood with African Americans, it wasn't all the Jews, and it wasn't all the African Americans. It was the best of both communities who made that important change happen. So we don't need every single Jew on planet Earth to become an advocate in public and lead an organization. We just need the people who are the most passionate, who are the best leaders, and the people who are the most motivated. If the best of us all stand up united and loud, we can make a change.
Thank you.
I think Jonah brings up a really good point, right? Like, not everybody needs to be an advocate and front and center, but I also think that there's a really big opportunity for a lot of people who are in this room and to widen the circle, and also who aren't maybe considering themselves content creators. But I was saying to Dana, you're also building the story of all of us, right? So in doing that, in widening the circle and building bridges, the opportunities are really things like telling your own story, telling people what you need for them to show up. Because all of this that is being created, algorithm or not, is building a historical, journal, diary, telling of all of us. What?
It's a testimony.
It really is. And so I think Jonah brings up this great point that we have to show up in spaces, we have to really be open and show up for other people, but we can't do that if we don't tell them what we need and they don't understand our experience. So both of those things, documenting it, I know the internet is a weird place and you don't want things to live forever, and all of our faces are probably somewhere. But the reality is there's also a really good opportunity to do that in your everyday life. So you don't have to lead the organization. You don't need to have a podcast like Jonah. It's okay. He's really good at that.
Thankfully.
Seriously, got me off the hook.
Thankfully.
But that's something that is an actionable thing that everybody can do, creator or not, right? Just showing up when you can in these ways, explaining what you need, explaining your lived experience for these other people's. It really does help.
Yeah, and in real life too, it's important to say that
1000%.
You definitely don't need to be an influencer in the professional sense. You could be an influencer where you are. You can bring, the examples I like to give, when it's Passover, bring matzah to your office and explain in the break room what it's about and what Passover is. When something happens at your school that isn't right by the Jews, speak up, speak to the faculty, make something different happen. I've gotten so many great stories since I started the pod of people who, encouraged by that message, have done exactly that. One that sticks out in my mind is a woman who worked at a preschool for special needs kids, and they received a holiday calendar, and on Christmas there was all this decoration around it, and then there wasn't something for Hanukkah, and she was I felt empowered, and I reached out, and then they added a Hanukkah thing.
That's awesome.
So you just have to be willing to speak out, and you can make the change wherever you are, not feel the pressure to I don't have 20,000 followers, so I'm just not going to do anything.
And
Right.
when we go back to dollar and cents, when we're looking at brand partners, when we're looking at even celebrities, right? We're also looking at who are they following and who is that person that they're all following, right? So all of you have those people that you are influential over. You have your sphere of influence, is what we call it. That's really where opportunity lives, and you can stretch. And if it's scary and uncomfortable, totally, this all has been. None of us talk about unprecedented times, but if we don't start to inch into those spaces and break out of what feels comfortable, we're gonna feel more isolated in the long run.
Absolutely. And I'll also say something that our AJC research indicates is that most people don't know what Jews are. Full stop. Okay.
That is wherever I go and anytime I speak, that's the number one thing I try to leave people with is Jews wildly underestimate how little people know about Jews. They know nothing.
So little. I
Nothing.
think that there is such a lack of understanding about Jews because we're not just a religion. We are a people, we are a culture, we are a history, we share DNA. I think that sort of lack of concrete identity is really hard. So one of the things that's really powerful for content creators, and I'm looking at a number of them over here and over there and all over the place in this room, is that a lot of them do the work of explaining that Jews are not one thing. They are all kinds of things. They hold different ethnic identities, racial identities, political identities. They look and sound differently. They're all over the world. Whenever I ask people, where is outside of the US and Israel, where is the largest population of Jews in the world? Where is it? France.
300,000?
It's about 400,000. My French Jews in the room, where are we? About that. People have no idea. It's shocking. So I think one of the things that's really essential is when we're trying to break down understanding online, which is a really not a place where nuance can thrive, part of it begins with understanding who Jews are, what they are, their diverse experience. It's really essential. I have one last question for the panel.
Let me give you one last little, I want to just
Yes.
to drill that point home another Van Jones nugget. Like
The gospel of Van Jones.
The black community doesn't even know that Greenbaum is a Jewish name.
Yeah.
Jewish names, they don't know that. They don't know that there are names that Jews tend to have. That's the level of not knowing that people have that Jews are completely unaware of. So you just really, really have to keep that in mind.
I lived on an island in the Caribbean that many of you have probably been to, and I was one of 2 Jewish people there for 5.5 years. And the Chabad from St. Martin would come over, and I remember when I told them I was Jewish, because they all thought I was Italian. I was like, all right. They were like, so which ones are you? And I was like, what does that mean? They're like, the ones that strap the bombs on or the other ones? And my jaw literally hit, yeah, this
Wow.
was 2011. My jaw hit the floor, and that was the extent this population of about 14,000 people knew of Jews outside the Chabad rabbi who came to light candles on Hanukkah for one night. Isn't that crazy?
It is, and I also think that this is an opportunity. We know for a fact, aside from the fact that people don't know what Jews are and their whole story and all of that, is that it works when people tell personal stories about their Jewish experience online. When you speak from a place of the Jews are feeling this, it does nothing. It does nothing. When you speak from personal experience, or even in a best case scenario, an ally speaks about a friend who is Jewish and what they've been experiencing, what they've been going through, a friend, a neighbor, a family member, a loved one, that has the propensity to change how people receive and understand what is being shared with them online. So I actually want to close with that, which is you are all creators and work with creators and have a ton of expertise. We've talked about all different kinds of things. If you had sort of one takeaway for those who are creators in this room and those who are maybe creators in training, creator light, if you will, what is a piece of guidance or recommendation you would give about how to be effective when we're talking about an incredibly crowded and frankly oversaturated creator marketplace?
So there are so many more allies than I think anybody realizes. People just don't know how to approach it. They don't know how to talk about it. And it is such a snowball effect, honestly. The more, it comes from home. So the more you guys just speak candidly, speak about your experiences, be real, be honest. You don't even have to really be calculated or curated. Just speak what you feel. People will start to understand. And then it starts to snowball. The next person feels comfortable speaking. Next person feels comfortable speaking. Then someone who's not Jewish sees it, and they want to speak now, and then it keeps going and going and going and going. And it's honestly something, again, going back to the world of politics and influencers started to become a thing. This is how it started too. Creators who were affected by issues directly started to talk about it. Then more people started to talk about it. And now look where we are. So again, just keep speaking about it. Don't let yourselves be silenced, and like I say, I cannot express enough, there are so many more allies than anybody realizes, and they're gonna start speaking more and more. It's just, it starts at home.
Thanks, Mayor. Melissa?
Yeah, so I think for the creators in the room, of which there are many, and I love seeing all the ones I know, you guys we have to keep up the good fight, and I know it's really hard, and this other side of that coin is protect your peace. Right? It's perfectly healthy to block people. It's perfectly healthy not to engage with people. It's perfectly healthy to take a break and post your vacation. This is they've been doing this we've been doing this for thousands of years, and we're going to be doing it for thousands of years because we're not going anywhere. Yeah. So you got to play the long game here. And then I think for all the people in the room who aren't creators or creator light, but maybe have access to the ability to pay these people, pay your creators, pay these people when they come and speak at your synagogue, pay them when they, yeah, you guys can clap for it because it's true. If you're gonna stick your neck out, you need to be compensated. You're not being paid for being Jewish, you're doing actual work and it's an actual job. So if you have the ability when you go back home to either, ask them to come to your synagogue or your women's group or your men's group, or you're hosting something, like even an honorarium makes a huge difference for these people who have lost so much revenue and have been putting their necks out for us. So I think that's really important. And there are more allies than we realize. I'm always floored by the people who say, thank you for saying that, and they are by no means Jewish or even white Americans or even American, so.
Thanks, Melissa.
I will say intentionality. Being a creator, honestly, it's like any other profession where if you just sort of go, well, I'm going to be a content creator, and you start trying to make yourself a content creator by copying what's out there or just sort of talking because your goal is to be a creator, it's not going to work. You need to have actually a message and a mission and an agenda, and the being a creator part sort of needs to come organically out of that. Like I didn't wake up and go, I'm going to be a creator. I was just saying stuff that I wanted to say and had a way I wanted to say it. And it's grown organically from that. The people who are breaking through are the people who have a lane, who are doing things in a certain way that is specific to them, a specific message, a specific way of delivering that message, whether it's, I eat different foods in my car and film myself talking about them, or it's, talking about anti-Jewish bigotry. Whatever it is, you have to do it in a way that's organic to you, that is specific to you, and that has a reason to exist. I mean, it is a marketplace, and if it's just an extra bit of noise, and the reason it exists is because you want to be making content, that's not gonna fly. It has to provide a service, a value to the marketplace if people are gonna, use their most precious commodity, which is time, to pay attention to what you're doing. So I would just say that the most important thing is intentionality, being really specific and thoughtful about what you want to say and how you want to say it.
Post with purpose.
Post with purpose.
Post with
that.
purpose.
Huh.
You can trademark that
And get paid for it.
and get paid for it.
I
Ask for
wish.
money, friends.
Jonah has a podcast. Anyone with dollars can sponsor it there. I just did it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a great way to do
It
it.
is not making money, I'll tell you that.
So we are going to start our Q&A portion of the program. So we have Hannah and Eugenia in the back with mics. They will come over to you. Please make sure that you introduce yourself, where you're from, with your question.
We got some hands up here in the front.
Yes,
too.
I see lots of hands. No surprise there. So we'll start with our first question back here.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and speaking to us. I'm David from Italy, and we have also a TikTok account, not that popular and that viral, but it's called Ask a Jew, because in Italy we have a very small Jewish community compared to the US, so probably 99% of Italians have never met a Jew in their lives.
Wow.
And what we try to do is to try to explain even basic concepts, like what's a kippah, why don't we eat pork, like really basic level. Since the war started, obviously most of our viewers were non-Jews, and we're kind of stuck where we don't know whether to continue and just do our Jewish thing, like very basic, or shall we open up and start to talk more about the conflict? Because we spend days reporting all the anti-Semitic comments that we get on TikTok and all the hatred that comes with it. So I'm looking for some insight from you to how to engage with our non-Jewish crowd when their only interest right now is how many babies have died in Gaza in the past day. So it's kind of difficult to go over this barrier and to get them, again, genuinely engaged with us. Thank you.
That's a really good question. And it's difficult to answer, obviously, because I'm also not in your community and seeing the things you're seeing. But what I would say is maybe you try to continue doing the sort of education you've been doing, but with an eye towards something deeper, meaning don't just say, okay, here's a kippah, this is why we wear it. Say, this is Shabbat, and it's a tradition that the Jewish people, who are a people from thousands of years, like try to slide in a little bit of that really important understanding of what Jews are, not just sort of, a dictionary for things that Jews do. Because, as we've mentioned already, the number one misunderstanding about Jews is what they are. People think Jews are a group of rich white Europeans who have the same religion. That's what people think Jews are. And so we need to teach people that Jews are, an ancient social group that share many, many, many different things, only one of which is the religious piece that was not even separate in any way until the 19th century. So I think doing things that are what I call sort of bulletproof. I think if you go too deep into the war, you're going to start being something that you're not trying to be, and it's going to be tricky, and that's a totally different arena than what you're in. But you can also be honest about what you guys are experiencing, and maybe you do that one time, and you say, we're getting a lot of hate. This is a site, this is a page just about, celebrating Jewish identity, and we get so much hate. It's part of the problem, and we want to acknowledge that, but we want to keep sharing and celebrating what we love about being Jewish, which has nothing to do with the war happening in a country that isn't this one. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Jonah.
No, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, the thing that's so beautiful about Italy, and I'm sure everybody would agree, is the food and the sitting and breaking bread and all of that. And you have tons of people there who probably want to come and sit with you and hear these stories the way Jonah's explaining them. So the war does not need to be everybody's platform. It doesn't need to be your personality. I read something today online and I was like, it's only 400 days? That doesn't make sense. And then I realized it was from a few months ago because it's literally people's personality. They're just reposting it. I also think you probably have older content you want to repurpose and bubble back up to the top that's probably really educational and has performed well. Like just from a technical and tactical standpoint, give the people what they already know they responded to because they probably forgot it already.
Mm-hmm. Also, go to the Jewish Quarter in Rome. Go to the ghetto in Venice. Yeah. Teach people about that history. Go to the Colosseum and say, guess what? Built by Jewish slaves.
Go to the Vatican and find the menorah.
Yeah, did you all know the Colosseum was built by Jewish slaves and Jewish plunder?
Yeah.
Yes. As someone who is, I did my DNA test and I found out I'm 5% Milanese Italian. It was like the greatest day of my life.
There we go.
In addition to also being 2% Moroccan, which I proudly lets me eat rice on Passover. I'm so proud of myself.
That's way more interesting than me, who's 100% Ashkenazi.
When I told my parents this, because we're also like Greek and Cypriot, I told my parents, my mom's like, it must be from your father's side. I was like, this is an amazing thing. Like, this is like thrilling. I love it, personally. Hannah, do we have, great.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking. My name is Meredith Seidman, and I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I'm currently a freshman at Connecticut College, and I run a TikTok account where I talk about anti-Semitism and other Jewish topics from a teenage perspective, and I've been doing that since high school, since I feel like that's really overlooked a lot. And as a part of that, I face a lot of comments on a daily basis speaking about the Palestinian struggle or just anti-Semitism and Nazi dog whistles in general. So I'm just kind of wondering how you guys are able to either compartmentalize or kind of block out that piece of your life when you're speaking proudly about your Jewish identity and your support for Israel on social media.
How's it been on campus? We haven't heard a lot about Connecticut College.
At my school, it's really small undergrad. We have less than 2,000. So most of the anti-Zionism or anti-Israel hate is either on anonymous social media platforms or on social media in general. I'm really fortunate. I don't have to face anything physically in person, but it's really hard, kind of balancing the mental side of being a Jewish student and Zionist in spaces where I know my fellow students are anti-Zionist and are anti-Israel.
Do you think they know what those mean? What those words actually mean?
No.
So does that make it a little easier to swallow? I know I've said it a bunch today, but this has become an entire generation's personality with this much information and probably even less facts behind it. And so when I was saying before, protect your peace, You don't have to engage with them. You can step out of those rooms and step out of those conversations and walk into rooms where they're actually going to listen, or at least be opening to listen. These people are not worth your time or energy. And I know it sounds so easy to say it, but the more we actually don't engage with them, the less power they lose, really and truly.
What was your name again?
Meredith.
Hi. So, as you might imagine, I have also received quite a few comments, and I get it that when you first get them, that it's a shock, right? And I think a lot of people who don't speak out or spoke out once and then retreated, it's because they got hit by that flood and it was too much and they bounced. Yep. You have to just sort of push through that initial flood, and then actually, I talk about this on the pod tomorrow. You know, I got to the point where I was getting so much hate for something that happened recently that at a certain point, I was able to start looking at it analytically. And I began to sort of treat it as data. And I was like, well, what can this tell me about what people understand or don't? I'm getting so many of the same types of comments that they could be almost copied and pasted. What is it that these people understand sociologically? Who are the kinds of people that are saying this stuff? So that's, you know, I've turned it into something useful. It's an opportunity to sort of study something sociologically. And as Melissa said, like 90% of these people literally have no idea what they're saying, where it came from, what they're doing. They don't know what the words mean. They're just doing what is unfortunately been normalized, and what they've been told is appropriate behavior, and like, this is what you do. They don't know, and they don't realize that there's 10% are bad actors, and they're the ones who are like planting these ideas and know exactly what they're doing.
And they're being paid for it.
And they're being paid for it, supported, and it's a whole operation. Most people have no idea. They have no idea. So as she said, like, don't engage. I never engage with straight up, Zionist scum kind of a thing. Block, report, delete. I find great, like, joy in blocking and deleting people. Just the fact that people think that, like, because they have a microphone, like, I have to listen to them. I love being like, no, I don't, and I'll never hear from you or see you again because you don't matter and you're not important. So enjoy that, and I report everything. I was talking about this earlier. Meta sucks. Their bar is horrible. Everything I've ever reported to Meta, like, nothing gets removed. X is actually shockingly much better. I've gotten people like banned from X for reporting things, but Meta no. But do it anyway, and there's great satisfaction, and it's just sort of part of the gig. And once it becomes that, it like stops hitting you. And the last thing I'll say is, you should not feel bad because a stupid person is yelling something they don't understand at you. Like, they should feel bad for being an idiot.
That's what John
1000%.
John Spencer said that earlier. He's like, don't engage with stupid people because it makes you, like, stupider, basically.
Well, also, candidly, a lot of the time, it's not even people who are all that passionate. They're just looking for a reaction and want to cause drama online.
They might not even be real. They might be
That's it. There's a lot of bot farms. Yeah.
A lot of bots. I will just make a quick comment that AJC is what is called a first warning partner of all the social media platforms, whether it's Meta or TikTok. At the time, we worked with Clubhouse, Roblox, which is a simulation.
Roblox
Becoming
is
a
danger
huge
zone.
problem. It's very
It
bad
is.
right now.
We are what's called a first warning partner, which means that we work very closely with the trust and safety and public policy teams of all the platforms to be in constant communication about updated language, about updated trends that we're seeing, because something new comes up every day. Once moderators, the first round is AI machine, then it's a person. Once the AI learns about something that's a problem, the bad actors need to create something new that can then circumvent that moderation. So we are in constant communication with those social media platforms to make them aware of these different things that keep popping up. Also, if you haven't checked out AJC's Translate Hate document, it includes a number of these different code words and slurs that you can find online if you're willing to put yourself through that process. But it's something that we take very seriously, and we're a very trusted partner of all these different platforms. I see we have a hand oh, there we go. Okay.
Thank you so much. My name is Galit. I'm from Chile in South America. I wanted to ask if, in your experience, is it easier to engage outside of the Judaism world if you talk about more than Judaism, if you speak out about other topics that are related, for example, with human rights or stuff like that, before only speaking about Judaism? That's my question. Thank you.
Do you mean in like a content creator sense?
Yeah, because for example, in Chile we're speaking about creating like influencers for Chile, but the thing is, if we only speak about Judaism or the conflict, our fear is that only Jews are gonna follow our accounts.
It pigeonholes you, is what you're saying.
And that's why I'm asking if, in your experience, how can we engage outside of these echo chambers that we were talking about?
I would say sort of two strategies. One is to include non-Jews in your content and very purposefully cross-pollinate. I mean, bring somebody, and if you're going to talk about some other issue, bring on some non-Jew who's big in that space and talk about it together. And then you're, opening up a door into another audience. And then the second thing is creating content specifically for non-Jews. So if you want to talk about something Jewish, you can do that, but gear it to the non-Jewish audience and not towards, don't be looking for, isn't this terrible, guys, which is going to be just to the Jews, and say, hey, non-Jews out there, here's something I bet you didn't even know, and doing it that way, you have to really try to engage them. But you can keep it Jewish. You just have to be thinking about who is my audience and how can I deliver a message that's going to be something of value to them and appeal to them in an interesting way. I find it's always much better to approach something like you're not trying to change somebody's mind or convert them. You're just trying to give them some information and let them walk away with it and chew on it and do what they will. And then you've done your part. You can't go in someone's brain, but you can give them something to think about.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm Argentinian, but I live in Israel. I work many years in the government, so I really like what you said about if the Israeli government is paying you. And I think that we should get involved with the government. I was the media director of the city of Jerusalem, and before that, I was the Spanish media manager of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I've been doing Asmara for 8 years. And I think we should create a 20-year plan strategy, and when I tell that to the government officials, they laugh on my face. We don't know what's happening in 2 months.
I'm available to go with you next time.
Yeah, so that's why I left that, and I created a group of 108 influencers, Spanish speakers and Portuguese speakers, in which we reach like millions and numbers that not even in English you get. Like 10 creators get 10 million, 100 million reach per month. So that's what I'm saying. We need to expand to this, and we want to create a 20-year strategy. So my question is, do you guys talk to each other? Do you form this agenda strategy? But not in let's do a collab of one video. I'm talking about strategically putting an agenda saying, this month we're talking about the Vivas and this month we're talking about Christianity, and this agenda topping strategy, high level.
So, okay, I'm going to assume every single person in this room at some point has said my favorite line, which is, Israel has such bad PR. Has anyone talked to them about it? Yeah, of course. It's literally a story. Here's the thing. When people say stuff like the Israeli government's paying them, it just makes it worse. There is no single point where every influencer is connected outside of these platforms. And truly, some of us are on some and not others. So there's a little bit of it's not as easy as it would seem, right? Because there's a lot of landmines when you're doing something like that. Now, that's not to say that we have friends all throughout this room who are creators. And sometimes we do. We all get together for Shabbats and talk about it and then post what a wonderful evening it was for Shabbat. I think that the challenge is there isn't a single place where we all, there's not a single space where everybody can go. I mean, maybe AJC is going to create that.
We're working on it.
Right.
I'll give you an insight afterwards.
Yeah, so maybe that's the thing, and maybe it becomes an initiative with AJC, and then they partner with JNF and UJA, and then all of these organizations that have access to Jewish people who are creating content can say, this month's theme is X, and in this theme, you can create as much or as little content as you want, but here's the facts you need to know. And that's kind of where we're lacking. It has nothing to do with PR. It's just the sheer spread of Jewish people all over the world experiencing different things and talking about different things. So if there's a way, I mean, we have done, many of us in this room have done stuff with the state of Israel. That doesn't mean we feel one way or the other about the government. We feel one way about doing stuff for the state of Israel. And I think it would be, it's hard because then that's when people throw in your face, I don't like Bibi, I don't like the Israeli government, and then it goes down a whole rabbit hole of that. But I think there's something there. I don't know what it is. I don't have like a clear answer, but to start to gather people, if you can start to collect the people that you see have influence and start to offer them that. There are some platforms here in the United States paying people like Urban Legend that,
Hey.
that's right. And they reach out to us and say, hey, we have this campaign. We'd all like you to talk about this one thing. And people get paid for it. And it's wonderful. So there are things like that. But there isn't a central thing right now. There are landmines that go with it. So my advice, in a very long-winded way, would be to say, start to collect the people that you see value, that you think you can build something with, get them in the same rooms, get them talking, play the long game, 20 years. Because it's always going to be a PR problem, and there's always going to be a landmine, and somebody's always going to say something negative about the state of Israel paying people and whatever.
I think it's a really good idea. I don't want to talk to you about it after.
It's a great idea. You should. Yeah. And
I
also,
will
Jonah and I are available. Mary's
Yeah.
available. We'll go to Israel.
They're
whenever
all
you want.
available.
Or Spain or Portugal. I'll go see some old family
Yeah, I'll
members.
go to Spain.
Right? Twist my arm.
I will say that as someone who works in this space and has now worked with content creators for the last 18 months, there isn't an institutional-wide strategy in the Jewish world for how to work with content creators. I think all of the Jewish content creators in this room will agree that it's a lot of, you're a good creator and we'd like to use you for this speaking engagement or this opportunity, but there isn't a unified strategy as it comes to content creators. What I can say as AJC and as myself is that we are really intentional with how we work with the content creator community, because our goal as an advocacy organization is we want to ensure that content creators feel secure and confident in understanding the content to be effective advocates. I think the biggest challenge is there's so much noise on the internet, and even the best intentioned creators can get it wrong, and sometimes it can create tremendous damage for the Jewish community. Once it's out there, it's in ink, it's not in pencil. You can't get rid of it. So one of our objectives at AJC in developing and fostering these relationships with content creators is to provide them with good content, white labeled content they can use and zhuzh up however they want, but we know it's good because it comes from a good place. We want to help create a community where content creators can learn with and from one another, rely on each other, find a space of support. In many ways, content creators, whether they realize it or not, have become first-line responders. They are putting something out there and they are receiving it probably worse in kind. So we want to create a space where they can ask questions, they can feel secure, they can feel supported, and in many cases, they can be compensated for their work. And the last place is about confidence. Oftentimes, content creators or content creators who haven't yet become content creators don't feel like they have the confidence to hit post. And we want to be able to be a space where they feel confident to hit that post button. So for us, it's not necessarily about trying to highlight the most followers or the person with the most reach. It's about honestly investing a lot in the nano creators and the micro creators who are doing such extraordinary work, who we feel we can really invest in and invest in what they have to say with their audiences. So it's work we're very proud of, and it's work that we are looking forward to growing over the next month. I think we have time for one or two more questions, yes? Okay. So Eugenia.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. Nice to meet you all. I'm an actor and also very new to the Jewish content creating world, thanks to Mike, who's sitting right here. I was sharing with Jonah earlier that he's been such a leader in my industry because there's been so few people speaking out in my industry against anti-Semitism. And for you, it's easy for me as a content creator to block someone or to hide a comment if I don't like it. But when I'm face-to-face with someone, because every production I've worked on since October 7th has been pro-Israel and pro-Jewish, and it's been amazing. but I'm very much dreading the day when I'm backstage and a conversation like that comes up, and I'm not quite sure how to handle face-to-face rather than just social media. What do you suggest?
So there's a few ways I would answer that. The first is, like, it's okay to be a professional at your job, first and foremost. So you don't necessarily, if you're backstage and there's a performance going on and you overhear something that's problematic, you don't need to blow up the show to yell at this person, right? You can be like, we're here to do a job. I'm going to put that away for now. I'm going to finish the show. And then you need to talk to them or whoever is in charge or whatever, like on a person-to-person basis, and handle it very professionally and dispassionately, and begin the conversation there. Start with the person who said whatever is, wrong. Say, hey, this really made me feel uncomfortable. This hurt me. Whatever your ideas are, like, you don't have to, again, don't necessarily have to try to change this person's mind, but to say, this makes me feel uncomfortable, like, I want to make sure we have a good work environment. Can we not talk about that here? If there's an issue, you take it up the ladder. If the issue is up the ladder, then you have a different kind of decision to make, if that's the kind of place where you want to be. If the people who are the leaders are the ones setting, this unsafe or hostile tone, then that's maybe not a place where you want to work. But other than that, it's about starting on a person-to-person level and knowing that it's okay to not blow something up at work. I mean, I've had people on the podcast talk about this exact thing where, they've said something like, not today, and like that's ended the conversation until they pick it up later. But like, you don't have to talk about world issues when you're in rehearsal for a musical, It's like, we're there to do a job, and it's okay to not be best friends or be ideologically on the same page as your work colleagues. It's only if it becomes like a real issue and makes, is actually hostile or extremely uncomfortable, take it up with the person, and if that doesn't go well, you take it up the chain and handle it as you would any other situation in the workplace that makes you uncomfortable.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question. Hannah. Oh, great. Okay.
Hey guys, my name is Kevin. I'm an attorney from LA. I just want to say thank you. It's been a great panel. My question is very specific to Jonah with the Snow White debacle.
Depends what your question is. We'll see if I'll answer it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, as his non-publicist, I would say maybe we roll over that one.
So maybe you can answer it broadly, but I just think the way that you kind of entered that dialogue was very brilliant. And
You're like, I'll answer it now.
Okay, we can talk about it.
you kind of have to navigate being, stroking people's emotions, but also being logical. And I just wanted to ask, how did you craft that response? Did you have to run it by a few people?
How'd you craft the response?
Did you have to run it by people? And also, I think there was, like, as an attorney, I'm also thinking about, you're kind of going after a younger female actress. How do you deal with that dynamic?
So, for those of you who have no idea what he's talking about, you're better off.
You can Google on your own time.
You can Google it. So many people talked about it. It was a slow news week. So all I'll say about it is this: like, I did not plant a flag in the ground and like make a statement. It wasn't even a post. I was responding to somebody who made a comment on a video of Tiffany Haddish talking about how much she loves being Jewish. And this person came on and made a very rude, sort of personal comment, and I responded to it off the cuff. There was no strategic planning. If I had run it by somebody, they would have said, you probably shouldn't post this. I was just responding. And I would be lying if I said I put a lot of deep thought into it and carefully crafted it. I didn't. It was just, I try to call balls and strikes, and I called it like I saw it, and that's it. I didn't think anything of it. I was actually on a vacation in Italy, and it was like late at night, and I was scrolling and saw that comment and commented. So in terms of the dynamic of the speaking to the person, like, I don't know. To me, it doesn't matter. My big issue with that whole thing was like talking about the workplace. If you are a professional in a workplace setting, there's an expectation to not bring, outside agendas when you're talking about the project that you're working on professionally, because then you're diverting attention away from this project that thousands of people worked on and are relying on to do well. And you're making it about something else, and that's only to the detriment of your project. And in this case, that the person at fault happened to be, a specific person. I would have had the same comment if it was a 90-year-old white guy. That didn't matter to me at all. It was the action being taken in that specific circumstance that I was responding to.
Thank you. Do we have time for one more question?
I mean,
Okay, one more.
I got
one
time.
more. I'm gonna let my moderator. Yeah,
we're totally cool.
I know you're cool.
You probably have another thing in here, huh?
Yeah.
Me? I don't know. We can hang out all day. Yeah, we got one more. One more. Okay, thank you. We have someone right here.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vishal. I'm from India, as you can figure it out.
This
Welcome.
is an amazing international room in here.
But
This is
I go
great.
to school here in Dallas.
The Global Forum.
So exciting.
First of all, I would like to thank all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the wisdom. I don't really have a question, but I want you guys to kind of give me an advice. So before you're wondering, what's this Indian guy doing here? Let me give you some context. I'm a Christian, and I study the Bible here in the United States from India, and I'm not ashamed. I was never ashamed to call myself Zionist, lover of Israel, and yes, so I would love for you guys to give me some advice. I'm involved on campus advocating for my Jewish homeland and for my Jewish roots. So what advice do you guys have for me, coming from the East, a Christian, Indian, studying in the United States? What advice would you give me? So thank you.
Advice towards what goal?
Yeah, I run a page, a small page. It's not that, it's just 100 followers or so. It's called the CIA, Christ, Israel, and America. Yeah, so I post content. Well, that's it.
Different CIA.
I mean, I think
It's going to confuse some people. But.
then it's going to be like, and he's being paid by the Israeli government. And it goes back to the bad PR problem.
Actually, I'm curious because Mayor, you're someone who is not Jewish. You advocate for Israel and the Jewish people. You are Christian. So, not to out you, you're a Christian. And you're very proud of it. Do you have any advice for this person who is in a similar situation?
I hate to say it depends, right? But so much in influencer marketing and like social media and content is an it depends situation. A lot of it is kind of starting out being authentic, trying out different things, realizing who your audience is, especially as you're continuing to grow, what they respond to, the type of content. Is it stories? Is it reels? Is it carousels? What's exciting them? Is it prompts? I think a lot of it is just trying out different things, knowing your audience, getting to know who they are, the way they're going to respond, how to approach them. I mean, I've been, running my social media. I'm chronically online since I was a kid, so I know who follows me. So for me, it was easy to figure out how I was going to start to approach this because I knew exactly what eyes were on me. And I think knowing your audience is very important in knowing how to approach it, what's going to be effective. It's going to be different for everyone.
I'm going to answer that from the totally opposite side. Not to contradict you, but just to give another perspective. I don't really consider any of that in the stuff that I'm doing. Now that it's sort of up and running, I'm looking at data and whatever. But I've always been sort of like, and if you build it, they will come kind of guy. And I would say what Mayor did mention that I 100% agree with is that it's about being authentic to yourself. And I think, you have an interesting story to tell, and you're a unique personality in this ecosystem. So you just going on and sort of sharing what turns you on, what excites you, what you're finding interesting, what you're excited to share with others, to me, that's a great starting point. And you start from there, and you'll see, you'll be able to judge for yourself what you felt was good, what you felt wasn't good. Then as things maybe start to pick up or not, then you start thinking, and you can start looking at, well, this one reel did amazing. This one thing where I talked about that, maybe you can start catering towards that way. But if your agenda is just, I have this experience, I feel this way about this thing, and I just want to share it with people, just go with that and just keep doing that and see where it takes you.
I will also say, I know we're wrapping up, there's a lot of very depressing content on, whoop, it's dead now. That's how depressed we are. There's a lot of depressing content on the internet, and I think especially in the last 18 months, it's been really easy for content creators to lean into the sadness, and there is always a space for sadness. I think in many ways that's what generates community, but there's also a huge space for Jewish joy, and I think that is so important. So we need to authentically laugh and dance and celebrate. And I think if I were someone who was telling a Jewish story, of course, like the sadness and trauma and pain is also matched with the healing and celebration and resiliency that is Jewish people. So if I were trying to teach people about Jews or Israel, that resiliency has to underpin everything, because we are a 56-year-old 100 startup who is constantly innovating to stay alive, and we're doing really well, I would say, in terms of being able to thrive against all odds. So that sense of resiliency is really key. And with that, I really want to thank our incredible panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Great questions.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
If you haven't followed them, please follow them on their various social media platforms. They can tell you more about that. Where can we find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram. It's at Merhersam. It's MERHERSAM. I know, crazy name.
Mine is on Instagram, on all platforms, is at Melissa Rosenfield with F-I-E-L-D, not Field.
Instagram and X at Jonah Platt. There's also on Instagram at Being Jewish Podcast. And you can find the podcast on YouTube. You can find it on every audio platform, Apple, Spotify. Spotify, now you can watch it while you listen to it. And we're also on TV, on Jewish Broadcasting Service, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think maybe Monday also. So it's everywhere, and I expect you all to listen to tomorrow's episode. It's going to really speak to this conversation in a really specific way.
So excited. Thank you. So just a quick reminder, once you've finished your lunch and dessert, we have a break until our breakout session, which is next breakout session, I should say, which is at 3:30. So thank you so much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of the Global Forum.